This is Jeff with Spirit Warrior Survival and Preparedness, and what we got going on here is the last blast of the 2018 maple sugar season. Just got the fire stoked up here and got a little steam going. As far as a preparedness subject, maple syrup is a great natural sweetener that you can make yourself if you're in the Northeast. We're almost into April right now, so this is the end of this season. I'm just finishing up, and getting a little late start. As you can see, it's dark already, but we're getting her going. And I think the sap probably ran pretty good last night. What it takes is warm days and cold nights, and we had a stretch of 2 or 3 nights that were too warm. Never got below about 40, you know, and I was just hoping the trees weren't going to start prematurely budding, because it's early for that yet, and that also signifies the end of the sap season. And I really haven't gotten what I thought I should have out of this year, but we're still pecking away at it. But it was pretty cold last night, so I think we may have some sap. Take a little walk and find out. I actually came up here earlier to do it and got interrupted. But we'll do it now. Yeah, there's nothing like homemade maple syrup. You know, you're cooking it slower than the commercial stuff, and it comes out a little darker, but it's got a lot of flavor. The essential minerals are still in it. You know, it's said that the pioneers and the Native Americans of the area, a lot of times by March, would be running low on their food stores. So basically they would live for weeks at a time on just maple sugar, and it had everything in it that would keep them alive for that period of time. Okay, so here we are. You see, I got some plastic taps there and some line into a food grade pail. Let's see if we got anything in here. Yeah, we got a little bit. Say this late in the season. I think last year we started the season about mid-February. I was boiling, and this year, I mean, I never even put the taps in until late February, and then even then, you know, it was pretty spotty, and then we had a deep freeze where it never warmed up during the day. And I normally don't do this with one hand and hold the camera. There's every little bit counts at this stage. This will probably be the end right here. They're talking cold nights for the next couple of nights, and then rain. So I think that's a couple more days of possibly collecting some more sap, and that's pretty much gonna be it. Oh yeah, look at that. To check all my buckets, I should have at least another 10-15 gallons on top of what I've got. So okay, so checking the rest of my buckets here. So far they've all been either full or half full. That's good. Let's see what we got in this one. Oh yeah, almost half full. So I should have plenty to fire up the arch one more time. And it's possible, I mean, we're still getting cold nights and warm days, so it's possible it might run one more time. At this point, I'll take what I can get. So hopefully next time you'll see some sap boiling. Alright, well, we've got some steam there. Let's see what we got for a boil. Oh yeah, she's going. Yeah, I wanted to get a little farther along than this before I went through the process, but to tell you the truth, it looks like a storm brewing up again, so I may have to end up shutting this down. But anyways, real quick, so what I've got is the stove part. That's referred to as the arch. This is just a homemade thing we made. Basically an old 275 gallon fuel drum that's been sitting out in the woods forever. I don't know, sometime around December I went out and like literally had to ram it with the truck to unfreeze it from the ground, and we dragged it out and welded some angle iron, cut a little here and there, put a door on it, smokestack, and she burns. Okay, now this pan, this is a 2x4 stainless steel divided pan. I got a thermometer, spout here. The idea is you got this smaller pan and you drip in sap from there. And it's divided into 3 parts. So, fresh sap is going in here. Cold sap pushes your hot sap here. It goes through here into the middle section. Pushes the hot sap up this way through here. And then the section with the spout and the thermometer. Yeah, we got steam. Is the final section, and you'll notice after it hasn't been going long enough now, but it doesn't take long. You will see, clear sap, nice good boil here in the middle, a little darker, and then dark material here, where it's getting done. Now the way I've been doing this, I mean, I'm like right out here in the open in the wind, and the idea is you should be able to, when this thermometer here gets up to 7, and that's the 0 is the temperature of water boiling, and it becomes syrup 7 degrees higher. So it starts at 0 is actually 212, that's where water boils, and 7 degrees higher than that should be syrup. So when that reaches 7, you draw from the spout finished syrup. But out here in the wind, and it's been cold, I haven't been able to actually get completely finished syrup without having to draw it off, like 80% done, 3/4 done, and finishing it on a propane burner, kind of similar to one of those ones that like turkey fryers have. So I really want to get where I can do this with all wood, and I'm thinking if once I get this whole setup inside a building, out of the wind, that few degrees of gain, I think, will make all the difference in the world, because I can get it on this thermometer, it'll get up to like 5.5, and it never fails. It'll get up there. I'm like, boy, it's almost done. I got my filter ready. Gonna draw some syrup, and the wind picks up, and it starts going down, or maybe finally it just gets diluted from just sitting there at 5.5, and it starts going down. So basically it gets up to 5.5. I draw off a few gallons, and I finish it on the propane for right now. I'm thinking to get by that and to be able to do all wood, even if I do sometimes have to finish it outside of this setup here, maybe some kind of rocket stove type thing, but for this year I'm out in the wind, and I finish it on on the propane. But you know, you do what you got to do. So, anyways, that's pretty much the process. You know, you're putting heat to it here. It dribbles out of that small warming pan into this divided pan, works its way through the chambers, and when it's all said and done, you've got maple syrup. I mean, this is really the perfect setup for a homestead for making, you know, the syrup you need for the year. At the end of this video, I'm actually going to end it with you know, a little talk on you know, more primitive ways, how the Native Americans and early pioneers did it. Because I mean, if you're set up in your homestead and you got this set up, that's great. I mean, if something happened, you're on the move. You know, I mean, it hits the fan so bad, we're totally back to hunter-gatherer status, and you're moving through the woods, and you're trying to do something like this. I mean, that's how they did it, and that's how we'd have to do it. So, you know, we're doing it like this because we can right now. You know, we're still dependent on technological civilization at this point, and you know, for me, while I still can, you know, I'm going to take advantage of it. But I mean, the plan is eventually to be away from it all, and you know, and maybe it'll all break down, and we'll have to be away from it all. I mean, truthfully told, honestly, I hope that's what happens, because that's what the world needs. You know, plain and simple. But anyways, that was a quick run through. Now, time to wrap up this video, I guess. So a little talk about how people started making maple sugar. Pretty much goes back to the Native American people in the northeastern U.S. Pretty much out as far as the Great Lakes, I know. Their method, from my research, normally they would take a stone hatchet and cut a V into the tree, and when the V came together, you know, they'd put a small stick so the sap would run down the V, run down the stick, and drip. Normally, I guess, into a birch bark basket. Most of the historical accounts mention that they would gather the sap into dugout logs, and you know, this prior to European colonization, so they didn't have you know, iron pots or anything. But what they would do is heat stones red hot and drop them into the sap, and that's how they would boil the sap. I mean, these people were hardcore. I know now the pioneer method, you know, they would box the tree, it was called. Same thing with a hatchet. They wouldn't make a V though. You know, they would make a square, cut out, and put a spline, usually I believe made of white ash, into the bottom of the boxed out area, and it would run down the spline. The sap would you know, into a container, you know, a wooden container, I would assume, and they would boil it down in a big round bottom iron pot on a tripod. Now I know later on, after the colonization of the New England, and trade goods were available, that the Native Americans a lot of times would continue collecting in their birch bark containers and using dugout logs to collect it in, but then boiled it as the pioneers did in cast iron big pots on a tripod. I know that's documented at least in one book I read of actual exploits of Native Americans around the Great Lakes. I guess it would have been in the late 1800s. The book Indian Boyhood, I can't remember the name of the author right offhand, but he lived with his people in the old ways as much as they possibly could at that point, until he was 15. And the book Indian Boyhood is, he chronicles that time period. And at 15 he ended up in a boarding school, and you know how that goes. But that just shows that you don't need special equipment to do a lot of this stuff. Basically, when I didn't have any stuff for doing maple syrup, any metal tabs or plastic line or any of that stuff, I mean, it's nice to have if you can swing it. I mean, if you get some resources and you want to put them in a practical place, buying stuff like that and having it, that's a good thing, for your homestead. But if if need be, it can be done. The first year that I collected sap and boiled it down here, I had nothing. I found some old half-inch plastic water line in a shed, and smoke from the fires get my eyes. And anyways, I cut it into lengths, a few inches long, and I bored a hole in the tree and stuffed it in there and collected the sap into some old drywall pails I cleaned out, and boiled it as far as I could over an open fire next to the trees. And when I got it almost done, I hauled it down to the house and let it sit on the wood stove, and then finally finished it off on in the kitchen. But that worked fine. Where there's a will, there's a way. That it's not a difficult concept. Any way to get the sap out of the tree with as little harm to the tree as possible. Something to collect it in. After, when I got some taps and I didn't have the arch or the pan or any of that stuff, I got 3 stainless steel 20-quart stock pots, lined them up in a row over a rectangular fire pit I made out of some old concrete blocks and stuff that were laying around, and I put some refrigerator grates over the top, and I boiled it like that for quite a few years, actually. This is the first year actually I've been able to have some better equipment, but you boil it down. I mean, the biggest thing is just learning the technique for telling when it becomes syrup. Back in the old days, they didn't make it into syrup so much; they'd make it into maple sugar, which is kind of a step beyond syrup. But anyways, you do what you can with what you have. So this has been my video on the tail end of the 2018 season. If you're new to doing maple syrup, the backyard maple sugaring, I hope this helped you out. Thanks for watching.